Hey everybody, welcome to our second video. So in this video, we're going to go through just the causes of World War I and leading us up right to the moment of when the war actually broke out. So when countries are going to start declaring war on each other, and you'll see how it kind of becomes this actual world war. So World War I, the nicknames that this war is given is the War to End All Wars and the Great War. Now, it doesn't mean great as in like, ooh, how wonderful. It's more like this is a huge war and it's changing the way war is being fought forever. And the war to end all wars is they're going to assume at the end of this war that like we're never going to have this again. We found a way to avoid this and we can't believe this just happened. And so we shouldn't ever have to fight a war like that again. So World War I is going to begin in 1914 and it will be fought. The armistice will be set at the end of 1918, and that is to stop all fighting, but the Treaty of Versailles won't be signed until 1919, so the war is not officially over until 1919. What I wanted to do first was show you this short little video. It's called World War I and Through the Numbers. And it's just going to give you a quick rundown of some of the how large of a scale, to help you understand how big of a scale this war actually was. So let's watch this for a second and then we'll keep going.
Learn about the First World War in numbers. The First World War involved over 100 countries. They fought for 1,565 days and lost 17 million lives, including 7 million civilians. In today's money, the Great War would cost about $3 trillion. In France, up to 75,000 tons of World War I munitions are still being found each year. 11,000 men were killed or wounded in the 6 hours after the armistice had been signed. That's more casualties than on D-Day in 1944. Japan lost only 500 men in combat during the Great War. However, its navy safely escorted 788 Allied ships and 700,000 soldiers through waters infested with German submarines. A shocking 56.9% of the 65 million men mobilized for the war were wounded, killed, or went missing.
So you didn't have to take notes on this, but that's just to help you understand a little bit of how big this war is going to be. All previous wars are going to be so small compared to this. And actually, Europe had been relatively peaceful for almost 100 years. So it hadn't been since the Napoleonic Wars, which were the early 1800s, that Europe had been in a large-scale war. So World War I, the things we're going to focus on is what made it possible for war to break out, and what made it possible for it to be fought for so long on such a global level. All of Europe is pulled into this, and other places too, all around the world. And then how did our world change in its aftermath? So those are the three major questions we'll be looking at, and those will be in your notes, those questions as we go along, and we'll talk about them in class. So we'll start off with the causes, the main causes like you had in your vocabulary video last week. And we'll go through each of those a little more detailed now. So if you need to, pause the video as we go to make sure you get all the notes that you need. Make sure that you're getting at least the minimum of what's required for class, and I'll make sure that you understand what that minimum is. So the main causes of World War I. So the first one, that M, the militarism. So that policy of glorifying power and keeping your army ready for war at a moment's notice. It's really going to become this military arms race. So it's going to be, Germany and Great Britain and then other countries too, like France and Austria-Hungary. They're really building up their military so that they can have these large armies ready at a moment's notice. And it's really going to be also spurred by this patriotism, and it's going to cause more patriotism. Our military is bigger than yours, and so we're stronger, and our country is greater because of it. This picture down at the bottom, it's actually a German battleship, and they just built them constantly to have this large navy. Relate this to our unit on imperialism, the nations of Europe, they're competing so much for colonies around the world, in Africa and Asia. And so sometimes these quests for colonies, it's going to be making the European nations, bringing them right to the brink of war. fighting over these colonies. They've usually found a way around it, as we've seen, but like there's a lot of hard feelings that are being developed here. And so as they continue to compete for overseas empires, it's like this rivalry. So it's like this competition between the countries, not so much of getting along and working things out. So now to discuss these alliances a little more in detail. So before the war, once the war starts, the alliances are going to be called something else. But before the war, you have these alliances start to form, and they're formed for specific reasons. So it starts off, this Triple Alliance, this first one up here, is going to be formed in the late 1800s, and this is just as Germany had become a country. So they're a very young country, and Otto von Bismarck, he doesn't trust the country, especially of France. So he understands that he needs to have allies, and he kind of wants to isolate France so that they don't have any allies. So he makes allies with Austria-Hungary, and with Italy, and they create what's called the Triple Alliance. And if you remember, Germany was extremely militaristic, and they had created their country basically through war. But after they had, created their nation, Otto von Bismarck kind of said, we've done enough. We have our land. Now let's, maintain peace within our land so that we can keep it. So he makes this Triple Alliance with Germany, Austria-Hungary, and then Italy joins as well. Then on the other hand, you're going to have the Triple Entente. Now, on the other hand, with this Triple Entente, you're going to have Britain and Serbia, France, Russia, and eventually the United States. How this comes about is through bits and pieces. Now, when Germany makes the Triple Alliance, that's still under Otto von Bismarck. However, a few years later, Bismarck is actually forced to resign by the new Kaiser, which is their leader of Germany. Kaiser Wilhelm is his name. And he forces Bismarck to resign, and he takes complete control of Germany. And he is not a peaceful person. And he starts building up the military, like I've said. And then he also lapses, which means it ends, a treaty with Russia, like a peaceful treaty with Russia that they had made. And when that happened, Russia kind of took offense to that, and they went and made an alliance with France. Now, they're not only, supporting themselves, now this kind of sandwiches Germany between them. Now, if war were to break out, Germany would be forced to be fighting a war on two sides. You'd have over here on the eastern side of Germany, and then on the western side against France, which is really what Germany's wanting to avoid, but they won't be able to avoid later on when the war actually breaks out. Then when Germany starts building their navy, like that picture you saw on the previous page, Great Britain fears that Germany's powers would become too great. And so they align themselves with France and Russia. So as you can see on this map, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, they're right down the middle, and they're surrounded by the Triple Entente. So this is the alliances that are in place before the war even starts. So if Germany were to go to war, and this is what alliance means, if Germany were to go to war, Austria-Hungary and Italy would be going to war as well in support of Germany. And then if France were to go to war, Great Britain and Russia would help France. And then also later on, you're going to hear about Serbia, which is down here towards the bottom of this map. And Serbia actually, like I said in the previous video, is very culturally similar to Russia. And so Russia is going to be their ally. So when things start happening down in Serbia, Russia comes to their aid, and as a result, so does France. All right, imperialism, as if we haven't heard enough about this. You thought you left this behind, but I told you before, imperialism is going to cause most of the problems from here on out. So imperialism, the competition for colonies, Africa, Asia, it's going to cause this rivalry among European countries, and then they're going to not trust each other. They're also going to be competing for raw materials. They're going to be competing for markets for their goods. Like it's not going to be an easy thing to maintain, because across the world, especially with Great Britain, you have colonies throughout the world. And at each place, it's not guaranteed that you're always going to have that colony. And so as they go searching for new resources or new markets, especially the new markets, It's going to cause them to not trust each other. So Germany is not going to trust the United Kingdom wherever they are, and so it's going to cause the hard feelings that then cause the war. And finally, nationalism. So the feeling of pride and devotion to your country, it's going to help unify the imperial countries that we've talked about. So Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Spain. So it's going to unify them, bring them together, and then it's also going to create that ethnocentrism, that feeling of being superior over another ethnicity or a because of this territory, this nationalism and the ethnocentrism. It causes hard feelings, especially between France and Germany. So not only, are they on separate alliances, they're not going to support each other. Part of that stems from this territorial argument. So during the time of Germany becoming a country, when Otto von Bismarck basically starts the Franco-Prussian War that's between France and Germany, France loses a chunk of land to Germany called Alsace-Lorraine. And that territory is culturally in and they speak French. So they're culturally French, they speak mostly French, but they become part of Germany. And so that is going to cause, the alliance that's going to separate them. France wants that land back, and Germany wants it for the German people. So, and then on top of that, nationalism is going to link the various ethnic groups together, like I said, the Russians and the Serbians. That nationalism has a tendency to become ethnocentric. And we talked about this in class a little bit. Like nationalism, you can have that feeling of pride and devotion, but once it becomes ethnocentric, it starts isolating other groups or, removing certain people from like what you believe is good or, powerful. So the main four causes of World War I: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. It's not that one, gets ranked above the other. It's that all four of these things are just causing so much mistrust and anger and politics in Europe that it's going to lead to the war. Now there's going to be one separate event that's then going to really start the war, but these four are bubbling under the surface, and as soon as that one spark goes off, you'll have the war begin. All right, so what I want you to do now is take a minute on this slide here. So you'll need to hit pause when I'm done talking and look down at your notes, and you'll see that I want you to kind of read this political cartoon and figure out which cause it's really talking about. So pause now and figure that out. All right, so here's where things start to get a little sticky and get a little confusing sometimes with how the war starts. Now, the Balkans, this region of the Balkans is actually going to be the part that's right underneath Austria-Hungary on this map. Now, the Balkans had been originally part of the Ottoman Empire, so you can still see that a little bit on the map down at the bottom. The Ottoman Empire is like in rapid decline. They're falling apart, and certain areas are starting to kind of separate themselves and create separate nations. And out of that, you have the countries of Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, Albania. So those countries, separate themselves from the Ottoman Empire, and they're extremely nationalistic. So they have a lot of pride in their culture and their history, and they want to then extend their borders. Now, there's not really anywhere for them to go, but there's one specific place called Serbia when they want a very specific region. Now, Serbia is just underneath Austria-Hungary. They share a border with Austria-Hungary, but like I said, are still very, they're called Slavic. They're Slavic people, and so they're aligned with Russia. Russia supports them. And so Serbia wants this area called Bosnia and Herzegovina. But that land is controlled by Austria-Hungary. And Austria-Hungary says that they're not going to help them, and they're not going to let them have that land. So, you have these opposing alliances begin. So the Serbians, Romanians, and Bulgarians that I have listed there, they align with Russia. They want to have more land But Austria-Hungary fears this large Slavic state and will not, give in to any of their demands. So as a result, the Balkans, they're going to be referred to as the powder keg of Europe. And so if you remember from our vocabulary, the powder keg literally just means that, it's a ticking time bomb. It's ready to go off at any moment. And when it does, it's going to cause a lot of damage and it's going to basically start the war. So our immediate causes, just going to give you a quick rundown of this now because we're going to do this more in detail next class. So the immediate cause of war, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he is the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, but he is assassinated in Sarajevo. Now, Sarajevo is the capital city of Bosnia, so that's the land that the Serbians want. So he's assassinated there. He had promised, reforms and civil rights to Serbians once he was crowned emperor, but these radical Serbians, they feared the reform, and they thought that if the reforms actually came and life got a little better for the Serbians living in Bosnia, that they wouldn't want, to separate themselves and go together with Serbia. So the Serbian nationalist group, they're called the Black Hand, they were dedicated, all they wanted was to free Bosnia from Austrian rule and unite them with all the Serbians under one government. And one of the members of that group was the 17-year-old, I think he was 17, I'll have to double check that, but his name was Gavrilo Princip, and he was a member of the Black Hand who he killed the Archduke and his wife. There's a longer story to it, and I'm going to tell you that, but for now, this is that spark that's going to set it all off. So you can only imagine what's going to happen, and maybe you guys can guess this. So put this in your notes. I'll make this the final question. How does this set off the war? Knowing your alliances and the causes of the long-term causes of the war, the main causes, how does this happening in Serbia, in Bosnia, how does that set off the entire war?
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them